Wing it.
Wing it. That's what we're doing today.
That's what we're good at. Can you see my ribbon?
No. Oh, no, there you go. Where did you get that from?
I've had it for years.
Oh, it doesn't help me.
So I think when I became an MHFA instructor, so 2017.
Okay. Well, I need to figure out where I can get one from. I keep wanting to get one of the t-shirts that says boys get sad too. Have you seen those t-shirts?
Yeah, so good.
I want one of those. Maybe get that in July. In the next month, sorry, June. God. Until it's Friday. Well, good morning, everybody. What a way to start the live by just having a random chat.
I didn't even know we were live. Brilliant.
I knew we were live. Did you?
Oh, 30 seconds. Here I am, just sorting my pin out and everything.
I did say. So we're going live, and you obviously was thinking about your button.
I was obviously away with the fairies. Oh,
I love it though. This is the exact vibe we need for a Friday. Coffee, laughter.
Oh, it's hot water for Sally, but yeah.
Oh, Sally. Oh, Sally.
I know.
Why are you doing that to yourself, Sally? Anyway, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. I'm well. It's been a really good week. How about you?
Yeah, not too bad actually. And as you said, I'm glad it's Friday. I'm glad that I'm nearly done for the day. Nice early start. So if I begin to ramble on, guys, you know where it is. And if you are here, say hello in the chat so we know we're not just talking to ourselves. And if you want to leave us there, we're going to carry on talking anyway. Hi everybody. Obviously, last day of the Mental Health Awareness Week. Looking forward to bringing this conversation to light. Obviously, I know Sally now, for nearly 2 years? Maybe a bit longer? I've known you, obviously, for nearly 2 years.
Yeah.
I know your story. We've kind of worked together for that long. And so, yeah, I know where this topic will go, and I'm looking forward to just chatting a bit more further and just showing people your story and kind of giving people advice along those kind of lines. So before we're going to go any further, I'll get you to introduce yourself. So yeah, please do.
Thanks very much, Rich. Always nice to see you. Always nice to chat. So hi everyone, I'm Sally Desborough. I am a mental health first aid instructor, a suicide first aid instructor. I write lots of different bespoke workshops, webinars relating to mental health. So I run my own business, working with Rich a lot under the Employees Health umbrella, delivering kind of mental health sessions to lots of different clients across all sorts of different industries. My working background is in HR, so I've got 11 plus years experience in HR. So my transition into the mental health and wellbeing space felt quite natural, but I think some people, how do you go from HR to kind of delivering mental health first aid training? The real key driving force for me making that change is my own personal experience of mental illness. Rich, I know you know this. In 2016, I was diagnosed with severe depression along with symptoms of anxiety. And that experience was a very interesting one, shall we say. I didn't really understand what was going on at the time. I didn't really know if other people would understand or get it. So it kind of stopped me from speaking up. And, this week we've been talking about loneliness. I did feel really lonely in that. My friends' family spotted signs, but I just kept saying, I'm overworking, I'm just working too much. Recognizing lots of people have stuff going on in their lives, and I didn't want to be necessarily an additional burden, so to speak. So I held on to all of those thoughts and feelings. So that felt very, very lonely until such time, really, I couldn't mask it anymore. So I had some really good conversations with actually close colleagues who I trusted. And that was really the starting point of my recovery. And it took pretty much the whole of 2016 for me to get better. But I remember so vividly coming out of that thinking, I don't want anyone to feel like this. I don't want anybody feeling alone. Had I spoken up sooner, then potentially I wouldn't have found myself in that space. So a year after that, I had the opportunity to become a mental health first aid instructor. I was doing that alongside my full-time HR roles. And then at the end of 2019, I decided to leave the HR corporate world and commit all of my time and focus to doing what I'm doing now. So that's kind of been my journey and my path.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. And if you didn't know Sally, there you go. That's Sally in a nutshell. Obviously, along with a lot more laughs and a lot more kind of education to go along with that. And I feel like you've just covered this, but I'm going to ask you this question, see if we can dive a bit deeper into your story. Mm-hmm. So I know, well, you said 2019, or was it 2018, 2019 when you first experienced this? You said just a second ago that your friends began to question your mental health, or how your person. I probably put that better.
Yeah.
What were they saying? What were they recognizing? What was you trying? What was your excuses and stuff you were going through there?
Yeah, so it's 2016 when I became unwell, and I suppose it was I sounded low. My tone of voice wasn't right, so I think it had gone past the point of everything's fine, everything's great, and so it's you're just not your usual self. You sound different.
Do you remember anything in particular you were kind of maybe using terminology differently, or was it like a
I'm fine. I'm just really tired at the moment and I'm overworking. So it's just that tone of voice. And it was just that constant excuse. I feel really tired, but it's because I'm overworking. I'm just working too much at the moment. It's always around that. That's the thing I was really focusing on. And it is true. I was overworking, but I think it was a trigger and it was a warning sign. And there'd been, a couple of years of significant life changes in the lead up to that, but it was the overworking that I think kind of tipped me over, to be perfectly honest. But people are calling me every day, checking in, which now when I look back, they were obviously concerned because that was unusual. I wouldn't get a phone call every single day from certain people, but I was getting a phone call every single night just to check in. So clearly, as I look back, they were worried and they were concerned, but I think I was in denial as well. Like, I didn't recognize the problem. I didn't really understand it. It was just all a bit of a big confusing mess, to be perfectly honest. When I think back to all the thoughts and the feelings and the experiences that I was going through, even now, I feel, wow, it's really confusing even describing it now.
Yeah.
What I was going through.
It's interesting. There's two things which I want to pick up on. First off, I want to pick up on the fact that your friends, and even at 2016, and I feel like we've made some huge leaps and bounds to what mental health is and how we help people and support people in mental health. But the fact that your friends were doing that in 2016 and recognized that you maybe weren't being your best self, to reach out and saying, "Hey, Sally, what's going on?"
Yeah, and it was probably more my family more than my friends, to be honest. I've been having conversations this week about friendships, and I've always been able to count on one hand my really close kind of confiding relationships, but even then I wasn't really talking to those people. It was more my family who was picking up on that. And I think equally, at the time I was I'm in the relationship now, but it was kind of quite new, and I was working weekends and he'd be saying, "Where are you? You're meant to be over." And it'd be, I was meant to be over at 12 and I didn't get there till 3. Oh, sorry, I've been working all morning. Completely getting anniversaries and birthdays. That is unlike Sally. Sally is just like, organization is Sally's. And so it was that kind of, I was forgetting the really important things in my personal life. I was forgetting, arrangements that had been made, which is, if anybody knows me, very, very out of the ordinary. And I think I just stopped caring about my work as well. And that's very much unlike Sally as well. At the time I was working in a fantastic organization. I was motivated. I was engaged. And I just stopped caring. I stopped empathizing with people. I was just inside. I was thinking, really think that's a problem? Seriously? That's not like Sally. So there's lots of things that was going on at the time.
And basically, it's still good that it's, as you said, like I put a post out on Wednesday about the power of talking and what talking does, and it is so powerful. But there is an element of, you can't talk to everybody, and like you have to feel safe. And I feel like your family, if you have that connection with your family, they're the people which you're going to do that with. You might have a connection if you've in the past and your friendship group is open enough to have that discussion to bring that together. Like, you don't mind talking about your feelings, and this is probably where men maybe struggle a bit more, is to have that kind of friendship group where you can just kind of go, "Actually, I'm feeling a bit crap." You don't have that so often with your friends. You have that more with your family, and this is where, like, I always talk about the struggles of poor mental health at work, and the fact that people aren't just going to reach out and say that they're feeling crap to a colleague or to a mental health first aider, because it's a vulnerable thing to do,
Yeah.
It doesn't matter their position as a colleague or a manager or whoever it is. It's still a vulnerable thing to do, and actually they might just need to do that to a friend or a family member, and that's where the therapist and the counsellors come in best, because there's no judgment, or fear of judgment from somebody who's a specialist within that.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing. It's the fear of judgment.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. You can't just talk to anybody. I think, there's a lot of discussion out there about, reach out to somebody, speak up. Well, yes, that's all very well, but you've got to have the right person to talk to who will listen to you as well. If somebody's just shutting down, oh, well, at least this, or they're just dismissing, well, I know someone else, they've got it far worse than you. That's not going to make you feel validated. It's not going to make you feel understood. So you've got to have those close, confiding relationships. And, I did have kind of close friends, but I recognised, having tried to speak to them about other things before, that there was judgment. And I was kind of like, well, I don't feel like you are a safe person to talk to. And, that fact was realised when I did afterwards. I was on medication. I'd done some online CBT. I was well into my recovery. And I said to my friend who I hadn't seen for a while, it's really been a difficult year this year. And, I've been really low and it's been really bad. And she was kind of like, oh, what do you mean? I said, well, I've been diagnosed with depression. I'm taking antidepressants. And the response was, oh, well, you should only take antidepressants when it's serious, And that was the response. And I was kind of like, and that is why I didn't speak to you in the first place about how I knew, having tried to speak to her about other random stuff before, there wasn't any understanding or validation or being listened to. It was very much kind of just a reactive, unhelpful conversation. And then my fears were realised. I was like, well, that's why I didn't speak up, so.
Yeah, and I think that's it, right? Like, and I always say this, and like, you have friends which are there for that element of social element, so the safety net of being able to speak to that person. We have friends like your friend, which I don't know if you're still friends with this person now, but you might not confide in that kind of way, but they're there to bring laughter and they're there to bring joy. So not everybody needs to be part of different circles and different social elements, and what they bring to your relationship can always be different. But as you said, if you recognised who you can talk to, who's safe to talk to, and that was the powerful thing here. If you imagine if you went to that person and just said, look, I'm having a really shit time, and that was the first person you reached out to, you ain't going to do it again, are you? So it's choosing the correct person.
Yeah. And are we friends now? We're still in touch on social media very loosely.
Okay, there you go.
I haven't seen that person since.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, fair. Was that from you or from?
I think there was probably a recognition from both sides that we've been friends for a long time, but we just moved in different directions. And I think sometimes you hold on to relationships for history, for sentimental sake. We're two completely different people now. We've gone on different paths and we've grown apart. And I think that's just the way that sometimes relationships. I think we probably recognise that, and we probably took private decisions potentially to just kind of we're still friends on Facebook and stuff like that, but we're not really in touch with one another on a regular basis.
Not close friends anymore, and I think that we all grow up, right? And I think that's allowed as well. The second thing I wanted to pick up on is something that Mike picked up on, and Mike expressed on Monday with his words of wisdom. Which, Mike, he's got tons of words of wisdom. He's incredible. But his words of wisdom, what he said, and what I think correlated with you is: did you enjoy your job?
Yes. Loved it.
Yeah, so HR, you enjoyed it, right? And he said this, like, he compared being in the army and being disengaged to getting poor mental health, as well as owning his own gym, being super engaged, loving his role, and then still getting poor mental health because he was too engaged, burnt out. And so there's two ways to get to the end destination. But you can get too engaged, and I think us as business owners have that ability to kind of go, actually, this is what we're doing. And you get so engaged, you get so bought into it, and all you want to do is work because you love it so much. But then the end result is burnout, and that end result puts you into a poor mental health state.
Yes.
As well as the other side of that is when you don't disengage, and you can see this within the workplace about how people can get into both elements. So I just wanted to pick up on that and see whether that was something which you recognise now.
Definitely. And I think there is a common misconception that people who experience poor mental health, they're lazy, they can't be bothered, they don't have motivation and this kind of stuff. But actually, people who are hard workers, conscientious, perfectionists, willing to go the extra mile and always, put 110% in, they are just as potentially going to experience poor mental health as other people as well. And certainly when for me, whilst there was a couple of years events and life changes that kind of happened in my life, there isn't one single thing that causes depression, there isn't one single thing that causes poor mental health, but it's certainly the overworking. It's because I was so engaged, I loved my work, I loved my manager, I loved the team I was working in, I was growing, I was learning, I learned so much in HR, so I was completely invested in what I was doing. And recognizing at that time as well, it's the busiest time of year, and one of the team members left, so I was trying to cover both roles. And so I just dived straight in because I thought, well, I've got to perform, I've got to deliver, I've got to do all of these things, I can't let the business down. There's a strong sense of, I don't want to let anybody down here. So I was just throwing myself in, working far too many hours, and then that was at the detriment to my health.
Yeah. And ultimately, we go back to that concept of work-life balance, right?
Yeah.
And when we're too engaged, we're engaged in what we're doing because we enjoy it, and we don't think about the consequences of the isolation of that as well. So I think that's probably it. And I think that will lead quite nicely in probably my next question about loneliness. But is that isolation of, I'm working, I'm enjoying this, but you forget to put yourself first, or even your friends, or that time aside to be a human being and be part of what a human being means, and that is being part of a tribe and being part of a community.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, at that time, I think there was a recognition in the office, I'd be the last to leave. I'd get in the next day and people would joke, Sally, did you actually go home last night? Because I'd be in at 7 o'clock in the morning and everyone would be leaving before me. And so there was this recognition that I was doing really long hours, and there was a lot of travel required in the role as well. I was working Saturday mornings and stuff like this, sending emails at 1 o'clock in the morning on a Thursday night, all of these kind of behaviours, really unhelpful behaviours. I was exhausted. But working in a regional role, our manager was managing the whole region. So I wouldn't necessarily see her for 2-3 weeks at a time. So she didn't necessarily have visibility of what was going on. And so when we did come to have a conversation and I told her, she was kind of like, I had no idea, Sally. I had absolutely no idea that this is how much work that you've been doing. And there was a responsibility on me to say, actually, this is becoming too much. But I didn't do that because I didn't want to feel like I was letting anybody down. And I wanted the service level to be just as good as before, our HR team member had left.
Yeah. So and that's the thing, right? And when you are that type of person, and I think maybe the word's compassionate, but when you're a team player and you want to keep doing well, and you strive for performance and you're a perfectionist, then you are going to be in that role of, you don't want to let people down, you want to keep striving. And pushing the company forward, especially when you're bought in. So you can see how that happens, and then burnout happens, and then obviously in your state, your position, you fell into depression. I don't know if that's the correct way to say you fell into depression, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, thank you. Validation there, thank you. I always get worried about the terms I use. So I think moving on nicely to the next kind of section of this, talk about loneliness. Obviously, the theme for the Mental Health Awareness Week this week, and we've probably discussed this on the elements of that. But and you might go back further than your 2016 and your state of depression. But was there any points where it really stuck out that you felt lonely? And then how you kind of overcome that, or how you dealt with that, and kind of dive into your loneliness story a little bit for me.
Yeah, so I actually did a post this morning about a couple of occasions in my life that really stand out for me when I felt lonely. And there's probably more than these two, but certainly these spring out in my mind. And one's a personal and one's a professional story. So personally, I was in a long-term relationship. I've been married in the past, and several years into that relationship, I wasn't very happy. I wasn't fulfilled. And again, it's a difficult one, because when you're married, it feels like it's such a major thing to be thinking about a relationship ending. I suppose because that piece of paper, it's all formalized, people have been to your wedding and celebrated with you, and I found it really difficult to talk about. So I held on to that for a long time. I was able to confide in a really good friend of mine who was completely outside of the situation. She almost saved me by being able to have those conversations, but I was extremely unhappy. And I didn't really feel like I could talk about it within my family because of the guilt, the shame, the failure. You know, I'm letting everybody down. And on the surface, nobody had any idea about how I was feeling because everything looked fantastic on the surface. You know, and I wanted to show that, you know, life was hunky-dory and everything was fine and we were great and we were happy. But internally, I was just not. And it was just constant questions every single day. What am I doing? Do I want to be with this person? All these questions. And that was a constant thing on a day-to-day basis. And I couldn't really be true with my, you know, immediate family with that. So I felt very alone, even though I had kind of family around me. You know, I felt very lonely in that experience. And, you know, I think at that point, you know, before, you know, the separation, you know, I remember vividly the weekend before, you know, getting up that weekend and I was just sitting on the sofa and I didn't move. And I wouldn't have eaten had he not brought food to me, because I literally just, you know, that for me, potential warning signs of moving into a depression then even actually.
Yeah.
And I just remember not being able to move from the sofa. I was just staring into space. I felt really low. And
it's worry, isn't it? And it's confined. And I think the worst thing about it is when you're in that state, you're in your head.
Yeah.
You're in your head the whole time, questioning everything you do and every single piece of life. You're kind of, there's a question to it.
Yeah.
Why are you doing this? Why is that happening? Why am I thinking this? Why am I doing that?
Yeah.
Why am I here? And it's all of those kind of thoughts, which, and that's why I think loneliness really brings. And when you are lonely, I think it's your thoughts which are overpowering your brain.
And it's all the self-doubt that goes with that. It's lack of self-esteem. It's you know, is this just a phase? You know, what is this? You know, I might come out of it. Will I feel like this again? Make a decision? And, you know, the grass isn't greener. Like, you have all of these massive questions.
And they are huge questions, especially if you're married, because you're always thinking, okay, this could just be a phase. And you don't know, do you?
Yeah. It was my first proper relationship. I had nothing to compare it to.
Yeah.
So I was kind of like, maybe this is normal. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, because we're all guessing, aren't we? We're all going through this as a guess.
Training manual on this. You know?
It should be. Actually, we can make some money off that if we should do that.
Yeah, let's put one together.
Marriage for dummies.
So that was really, really hard, and I felt very alone. And I did try to speak to somebody about it, but again, it didn't feel safe. So the conversation was cut very, very short, because I was like, okay, I clearly can't talk to you about this. Yeah. So I kind of, was left with that. And how did I come out of it?
Did the conversation with him when you had that the week after, how did that feel?
Scary. Yeah. It was almost like an out-of-body experience.
Yeah.
And it took a lot of courage, because I think, you know, he was getting to the point where he was unhappy as well, because I was just not engaged.
Yeah.
You know, living in the same house, living completely separate lives, really. And he started the conversation, really, and I was grateful for it, because I was so scared, and I had so much brain fog as a result of all the questions over months and months and months. You know, this wasn't an overnight thing, and that was part of the problem. I think people had just thought, I've decided to up and leave. This was months and months, if not, you know, it could have been a year of pondering and thinking in my mind all of that time. Whereas because it seemed very sudden to everybody else and everything was hunky-dory, it was like you just got up and left, and it wasn't like that at all.
It's never like that, I don't think.
No, but there's a lot of quick to jump to conclusions, quick judgments around it. And so I felt like a lot of it, I was managing other people's emotions. I was managing all of that, managing everybody else, rather than thinking about myself. And that's why it took so long for me to actually do anything about it, because I was so concerned about everybody else. Bit of a nightmare, really. Bit of a storm.
I feel like I mean, this is fine because this. I love this. The conversation's been brilliant. We have taken a weird detour into relationship advice and marriage advice.
I wouldn't say advice. I think just sharing experience.
Sharing experience, yes. Advice, yeah. Maybe
What
not.
you take out of it.
You said you were obviously lonely at another point. Could you dive into that a bit more for me?
Yep. So that was a professional setting. So I worked for an organisation where there's probably a couple actually. I worked in an organisation in a standalone HR position. And that was quite difficult because being standalone HR, didn't really have anyone to kind of confide in and things like that. So when you work in an HR team, you can bounce ideas and all that kind of stuff. Worked in a standalone HR role and I loved that. You know, that was the starting point of my HR career. Had changes in kind of managing directors and stuff like that. And essentially I was told in that role, you can't be friends with anyone, you can't be friendly with anybody, you are the HR person. So I was kind of just like in an office with loads of people and I couldn't really have informal, it felt like I didn't have permission anymore to have informal chats with people, be friendly with people. So that meant I felt very alone in that role, kind of just shut the door on my office and, you know, loads of people outside having a laugh and having a joke and stuff like that. And yeah, that was a tricky time when that conversation came up. And when you're in HR because you like working with people, that's a bit difficult. So it felt very
barrier, isn't it?
It felt very formalized. And I think as a result of that, I really questioned what people thought of me in the business. Am I hard-nosed? Am I an ice queen? Am I cold? I really questioned my likability. And to be honest, I think that's probably something that I struggled with then. I even struggle with that now in social settings. I have a little bit of social anxiety where I'm questioning, you know, am I a likable person? I don't really know. And because I basically had to be so cut off in that HR role, I very much felt like, well, I'm not going to be liked. I'm going to be the hated HR person, you know, that, you know,
really, rep there, well, you guys already have.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, that was quite a lonely experience. And then equally in a later organisation, working in a team where I didn't feel like I could be myself. I couldn't be honest about how I felt in the organisation. You know, I think the business values were really great, but I didn't necessarily see those values being breathed on a day-to-day basis. So I really struggled to feel aligned with that. And every day was a struggle getting up every day. You know, it's going to be a great day. The team's going to be great. And you'd walk in and just like, I don't fit. I just don't fit. No matter how much I try, no matter how much energy I put into positive affirmations in the morning, you walk into the room and you're just like, oh, every day. And that was a very lonely experience.
Hard, isn't it?
I just couldn't be myself.
Yeah. And do you think it snowballs as well? I think when you begin to feel that, you feel that more, and then you feel it more. So when you first feel it, you're like, oh, it's just a feeling. It's all a thought process.
Yeah.
But then you feel it again, you get maybe cut out to something else, and then you kind of go, that's happened 2 or 3 times, and it just begins to snowball. And actually, then you begin to resent to go to work.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things where initially I was like, just give it a chance. Just give it a chance, Sally. Just give it a chance. Just, you know, find your feet, take some time to settle. You know, when you're 2 years in, that's a long time to be, you know, mentally preparing yourself every single day for going into the office and working with people where you just don't.
A lot of energy as well.
So much energy. And, you know, there were points where my mental health was dipping again. You know, I was overworking again, Sally. That's your trigger sign. That's your warning sign. It's your trigger. And then you do it again. And, you know, I was finding myself getting into a deeper and deeper state. And I just kind of had to stop and check in with yourself, Sally. You've got to stop working these hours. You've got to take your breaks. You've got to do the stuff that you enjoy. Do your physical activity. Start your yoga. So I really had to check in with myself because I was so close and so at risk of, you know, going back to that place. And I really didn't want to go back there.
Yeah.
But that felt very lonely, even though we were working in a team of, you know, 30.
Yeah. And I think I'm going to go back to my statement earlier on. And then we said this yesterday with Ali, and it's something which always resonated with me from the stuff Ali does and the way Ali talks about mental health and how the brain works is every day we have like 100,000 thoughts, whatever it is, 10,000 thoughts. She said this research says different things, but tons of thoughts.
On average, 88,000 thoughts, isn't it?
Yeah, something like that.
70 and 100,000 thoughts every day.
Yeah, and the majority of those are negative. But when you recognize those, recognize those negative thoughts, they compound, and I think then you begin to have more and more. And when you're lonely, I think it's just a build up of those negative thoughts. and it's harder to switch those off. So when I think about my loneliness, I very much look at the COVID situation, being a single guy in a house, majority of the time by myself. You're sitting there and you're kind of questioning, I wish over those weekends, or in general, even if it wasn't during the lockdown, the weekends where everybody else is doing some fun stuff and you're sitting there by yourself, then your negative talk comes out, and then you feel, oh, nobody likes me. What am I doing? And that loneliness begins to kick in, but it's only a fourth. And I think as I've grown, I've got better at silencing that and accepting the fact that people are just busy. I'm not lonely. I've got a really great life. I can look at the really good positives around it.
Yeah.
And then understand it and accept it a bit better. And then the loneliness begins to go away, knowing that actually this is just a week, this is just a Sunday or a Saturday, that all my friends are busy and I've not been able to organise something to keep me from being lonely. So I think for me, that was when I really concentrate on what loneliness was for me. That's my biggest element.
Yeah. And that's amazing, because being able to stop and take stock of that, because you can so easily get caught up in those thoughts. You can easily ruminate. You're going round and round in circles, and that can be a really difficult pattern to break out of that cycle. But there are ways that we can kind of challenge those thoughts, taking stock, thinking in the broader scheme of things. Okay, well, rather than focusing, okay, this isn't happening today, what happens broadly in my life? Okay, well, during the week I have these conversations, I'm engaged with this, I do this, I play my hockey, as you do, Richard, so focusing on, that side of things rather than, but it's really tricky to come out of that, I think.
Yeah. And this is where I love journaling. And if you would have seen all over my social media, and we now have one to go with the program. I now have our own little journal. Anyway, no plugs. Sorry, no plugs. But that concept of just continuous writing down the good stuff makes you think about the good stuff and what's going on and what you're looking forward to and what's been really good. Takes the mind away from those negative thoughts and then the moments where you can kind of dive into worse negative experiences.
Yeah, and the things that you don't have.
Yeah.
Do want type thing. Yeah. And journaling, it's fantastic. I don't journal, but every night before I close my eyes to go to sleep, I think about and I practice gratitude, and I'm thankful for all of the things that have happened that day. Our conversation is really energizing, so I'm really grateful for that. So focusing on that at the end of the day. I think sometimes people think, practicing gratitude and journaling, but there's no rules around it. You could just think of 3 things, write down 3 words. There's no kind of format to it. You've got to make it work for you. I think that can be such a help.
Shift in the mindset makes a huge difference. And like, I've got one client which I'm obviously not going to name, but I've got some people which are more negative, and you're like, okay, well, bring some negative in, because it brings the whole environment down a little bit. We're trying to look at the positives. I'm always like, what's the positive? It helps you progress, and I think it helps change and shift the mindsets to the bad things that are happening.
Yeah.
Anyway, slight detour. So my next question before I get into the final piece, where I know you're really looking forward to the final piece, is the mental health awareness week, and mental health in general is obviously at an epidemic level. Numbers are rising. Poor people, young people's mental health is increasing, and people taking time for work is still increasing. And the rates of burnout have gone through the roof. How do you see us improving that? It's probably like a very hard question to answer, but I think we get started and we can kind of adapt.
So how do we see us coming out of that? So, well, we all have mental health, right? So, and we do know that mental health issues are on the rise and at a fast rate. And I think, there was some research published in October, was it last year or the year before, across 204 countries, that anxiety illness has gone up by something like 28% and depression's gone up by 26%. So it's very much a global issue. How do we come out of that? How do we improve that? I think we need to do a lot more to tackle stigma, to be able to have free and open conversations and have people who understand as well. I think there is going to be a lot around this social connectedness, in a ever evolving technological world. We do need to and our workplaces aren't going to be the same going forward anymore. How do we work in a safe way where people do feel connected? Because social connectedness is absolutely vital to our to our, health and well-being. It's in our physiology. Our brains are wired for the social connectedness. So we've got to find ways to tackle loneliness and that is different. Solitude. I appreciate solitude. I appreciate my alone time. We all have different tolerances to that, though, of course, don't we? So I think going forward, organizations need to think about how technology can be used at our advantage. But equally, how do we ensure that people are connecting at a quality level? Because I'm hearing, friends, and anecdotally people are saying, we're doing 2 days in the office and 3 days at home. We're now being pushed to do 3 days in the office, and there's loads of uproar because ultimately we're going into the office and we're doing exactly what we would do at home. There's no social interaction. We're just on our computers being in the same room together. So we're not actually connecting. What we're doing is we're just being together. We're not in isolation, essentially. We're not in social isolation, but we're not actually connecting. It's for. So, it's thinking more strategically about how employees can feel connected when they're going into the office. What is the purpose of that? And
for sure. And I think the social I look at social wellbeing coming from the sports background. I know you're similar, right? And I've always looked at that social element as being like the most important thing for me. I'm a people pleaser. And I love people, so I've always known that's a big part. But I think it's really hard for people to understand that role of that and how then they become more socially aware. So they spend more time focusing on those importance for people.
Yeah. I think the other thing, what was I going to say? It's about balance. Balance is absolutely key to everything, with work, with life. If we are overworking, then we are more likely to experience mental health issues. And I know boundaries have been really difficult for people to set over the last couple of years. And, we've lived the last couple of years in very different ways. And, with kind of children and caring responsibilities and all those kind of things, how do we create that balance between work, life, caring responsibilities, and all of those kind of things? And giving ourselves permission to stop and rest and not do
solitude.
Yeah, I literally have no idea if that really answered your question in terms of how we.
I think it did. I think it was an awesome answer. The awareness of the stigma, creating a voice about stigma. I also think, for me, hit a nail on the head is the social interaction for people, and having a safe network of people to speak to, and but not only that, but then on the second side of things, to have fun with, because that's what we are. We're a community, right? And we're based as humans. And I think I said this yesterday. It's just like, we look at what humans were 100 years ago before the war. We were villages of people. We all knew our neighbours. We all were friends. We worked as a team to survive. Whereas now we don't. We can do this all from our office or our living rooms via this thing. And actually, that's taken away from that community. And I think we need to get back to that.
Yeah, the community side of things. And I'm pretty sure Mike and I chatted about this, and it's something I chat about with my other half all the time, that it was communities that raised children. Oh, that's so-and-so's son from 17 roads away on this road. Some people don't even know their next door neighbours now. In blocks of flats, people don't even know the name of their next door neighbour. So that sense of community, I think, has really been lost. We don't have that connection. We don't have that network like we once used to. And, in the busiest of cities, I think London has been rated the second loneliest city. So even though it's got millions and millions of people,
they don't talk to each other.
No one talks to anyone.
Yeah. I also think my dad's an example of this. My dad's an old, he's a 65-year-old British white male builder, but has the confidence to talk to anybody about anything, right? And we'll just laugh with anybody, and it's brilliant to see that there's no worry. But I think that's lost now. You don't have that. I think there's so much more worry about pleasing people. And I'm the same. Like, I'm standing there going, Dad, what are you doing? Like, this is so embarrassing. But actually, like,
it's nice.
What they used to do is it's refreshing. And he has the confidence just to have a laugh with somebody.
Yeah.
And I think actually that's what the community was. That's what we were. And I think we've lost that so much.
Yeah.
That'd be one good thing to see come back somehow.
Yeah, and I have to say, my brother's the same, actually. He'd go out on his own and he'd say, strangers are friends you've not met yet.
Yeah.
It's an amazing way to look. And he'd go out, he'd quite happily go out on his own, and he'd meet a bunch of people and they'd spend the evening together and then they'd be friends.
Wow.
Whereas for me, I'd be like, oh, I'll take a book and read it.
Yeah, I'd be the same. I'm nervous.
Now I have matured now, so I'm quite happy and quite comfortable in my own skin to kind of sit somewhere and, you know, have a glass of wine by myself or drink a drink by myself. You know, I'm comfortable with that. But, you know, years ago, not for Sally.
Yeah, I also think that's another thing. I mean, we'll obviously chat for 40 minutes, but that is resilience as well. It's time. It's learning yourself, learning what you can and can't do. Also gaining confidence, and I think that just happens with time. I think all parents are embarrassing because they've gained the confidence, probably because the kids were embarrassing, and so you learn to deal with that. And I think that just is a learning piece, right?
I think you also start caring less, actually.
That might also be the thing as well.
Walking around Marks and Spencer, the music would be on, Mum would be dancing down the aisles, you know. I'd be like, oh, Mum, you're so embarrassed. Who does it now? Who does it? Yes, I do, and I'm proud of it.
Yeah.
I just don't
I also know how close you are to your nieces and nephews, and so I can imagine you were exactly that as well with them.
Yeah, so embarrassing.
I love it. So, because we have got, where are we? Oh, look, 44 minutes. Sally, the big question, and let's make sure I get this correct. What are your 3 top tips to help people? I want to use the word happy, but when I said that in the pre-chat, you gave me the look of, oh, happy. But I'm gonna stick with it. How do you create happiness?
Yeah, so I think happiness means different things to different people. What makes one person happy won't necessarily make somebody else happy, right? So I think it's for me, coming back to the basics around, I honestly think that sleep is so linked with kind of happiness and feeling content and being able to cope with day-to-day life, emotional regulation and all that kind of stuff. I think we need to look after our sleep. That might seem kind of really kind of out there, but absolutely looking after our sleep, because that's going to help us look after our physical health and our mental health as well. So if we feel more primed and ready because we've had good sleep, that's only a good thing. I think some of the things we've talked about in terms of practicing gratitude, focusing on the good things. It's so easy for us to dwell on the not so good stuff and carry that around. That can start to feel heavy. And we've already talked about the number of negative thoughts we can have every single day. So how can we focus on the good things and the things that we do have, the things that we feel fortunate for having, the things we're thankful for? So looking towards that. And it's definitely, you know, good quality social connections that we have people. So if there were 3 top tips, I would be saying sleep, gratitude, social connectedness, and having those strong, trusting relationships, the people you can confide in, ask for help, but also celebrate your wins with. You know, if you're talking to people and you're celebrating wins and they're kind of a bit dismissive, oh, well, you've just been lucky, haven't you, with getting that piece of work? Oh, okay, well, no, actually, I've worked really hard and I've been, you know, working for the last 2 weeks on this specific proposal and they finally accepted it rather than rejected it. Actually, is that the right person to talk to?
Yeah.
You know, and if they're not, maybe not. If you can't celebrate those wins with those people as well, because you need that too.
Yeah, you need people to pull you up, not drag you down, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Positive people, optimistic.
Yeah, for sure. They were 3 great tips. I think I agree with all 3, so I'm not going to question any of them. As if I would do that anyway. Thank you, Sally. Thank
you.
I mean, I always feel like we can't. 45 minutes is like probably not long enough for all these chats, but I think it's quite a good time. But thank you for joining me and bringing this awareness. I hope you have a lovely weekend. And I hope everybody, if there is anybody, I mean, nobody's commented, so I don't think there's anybody watching us. So we just talk to ourselves for 45 minutes, but that's fine. We do that.
I'm happy. That's good.
Yeah, we've had a great time. I hope somebody's found that useful. This will obviously we'll share this on YouTube and stuff, and people better see this as on further throughout the year, hopefully, and hopefully it's helped at least one person. Anyway, thank you, and thank you everybody for turning up, and we will see you all soon. Have a lovely weekend.
Have a great weekend, everyone.